It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. Today, it's important that I tell you the exact date. It is March 13th, 2023, and I'm just going to keep this intro very short because there's well more than an hour of stuff already for the show. But the thing I do want to interject is right after this introductory part, I'm going to have an interview with J.R. Becker, and I'm telling you this extra now. There is a Kickstarter for his newest children's book, and this one is called How We Found the Earth is Round. And so if you want to be part of this Kickstarter, you're going to want to go to that page right away. Historically, these things fund 100% quite quickly, so I'm going to mention it here, even though it's going to be mentioned later. But you go to Kickstarter, and the project is called How We Found the Earth is Round. I could give you the web address, but it's going to be long. So just go to Google or whatever browser you use and put in Kickstarter, How We Found the Earth is Round, and it will direct you to it. And there's all kinds of ways you can support, from very small amounts to large amounts. Get your picture, your kid's picture in the book, get your name in the book. And if nothing else, help a writer and an illustrator make a book that will find its way into the hands of tens of thousands, maybe. I don't know if they sell hundreds of thousands, but a lot of kids over the years will be able to get this book, read this book, or have their parents read this book to them so they have an understanding of the absolute fact that the earth is round, oblique spheroid, something like that. Not oblate, it's oblique spheroid. It's shaped like a ball. We all know this, but there are people who deny it. So anyway, I'm babbling. Take a quick break, and then we'll go right into the interview first this time, and then the Investing Skeptically segments later. Don't go away. All right, everybody, welcome back. With me now, I have J.R. Becker, who is a friend of the show, and I think, J.R., have you been on here twice already? Is this the third visit?
I think so. We have so much fun. I can't even keep count. But yeah, I think it's the third time.
Well, JR here is the author of a series of books called Annabelle and Aiden. And correct me here if I'm wrong, but they're children's books, and they're supposed to help the kids understand the world a little bit, have some fun, and maybe learn a little something. And I'm just going to go through the titles here, if you'll forgive me for a moment here.
Sure.
We start off with The Story of Life, an evolution story. Oh, the Things We Believed. Worlds Within Us. What Happens When We Die. Our Human Evolution. Annabelle and Aiden. Well, they're all Annabelle and Aiden. Number 6, This World Was Made for Me, which I know what that's all about. And then to cap it all off, Oh My Gods, A History of Belief. Did I get them all? Is that?
I'm impressed.
Well, I'm cheating. I'm reading off Amazon.
More. Yeah, no, I'm impressed. And then there's one more that is not available on Amazon, but it's on our website. After Oh My Gods, we came out 1 year ago. We came out with a title called There's a Dragon in My Garage.
We did talk about that. Why is that not at Amazon? Just 'cause?
There's different answers to that question. I'll tell you more off the air.
Fair enough.
But that's one we just want to keep exclusive to our website.
Fair enough. Well, you have a pending book, right?
Yes, so I'm so excited to tell everybody that we have a new book called How We Found the Earth is Round. And it, we could talk about that, but the Kickstarter for that launches, or I should say launched on March 13th. So people could actually find it right now if they go to howwefoundtheearthisround.com, and they could pre-order a signed copy of the book.
Now, when you say March 13th, just to be clear, we're talking March 13th of 2023.
Yes.
Yeah. So just in case I put this out a few days early, they'll have to wait, but they'll be all excited. Okay. But March 13th, you have the Kickstarter. And again, of course, the book is How We Found the Earth is Round. And what happens with this Kickstarter? How does that work? Walk me through it.
So Kickstarter basically allows fans and consumers to become part of the product by pre-ordering it, and they get all types of cool rewards. They get their name in the book. They could purchase a spot for their children's face to actually be in the book as one of the characters. And there's all these fun rewards like that. Also, school visits. People could purchase having me come to their school. An author visit. We have backpacks. We have tardigrade plushies. All kinds of cool stuff. And I use the money that people pay to pre-order the book. I use that money to help pay for all of my expenses, such as file creation, illustration, editors, and a huge print run. And that's how it works.
And just because I haven't said it yet, of course, anyone can go find these in quality bookstores, except for the one that's on your website. These are fully illustrated, right? Every page is a masterwork of art.
Thank you.
And just to be fair, who was doing all the artwork?
Right. So we've gone through 2 illustrators over the past 8 titles. One of them we actually. I'm sure, Phil, you remember that I spoke to. One of them is in Italy,
Yes.
Max Rambaldi, and I actually met her, quote unquote, meaning spoke to her for the first time ever on your show. And I think you two were speaking Italian a little bit.
We did a little. It was good fun.
It was good fun. And then for this new book, we actually have a brand new illustrator I wanted to bring in, because this book, How We Found the Earth is Round, mostly takes place in ancient times. And I thought so I found a new illustrator because her style is very vintage and quote unquote old world. She uses traditional watercolor elements, and it just fit in so well with the theme of ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, and it just looks like an old, vintage children's book, maybe from Europe. So her name is Raluca, and she lives in Romania.
Nice. I think I have the cover. Is this the official cover image that you sent me?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Thank you. We worked very, 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 very hard on that cover for a very long time. I think more than any other cover in the Annabelle and Aiden series. So I'm glad with how it turned out. Yeah. There
is a lot going on here, and I'm not going to spoil it from everybody because I want them to go. And where can they go again once it's live?
howwefoundtheearthisround.com.
Excellent. And of course, what's the Kickstarter page?
So that link will actually take you right to the Kickstarter page.
Oh, okay. Excellent. And they can see that image there?
Yes. The book cover is on the Kickstarter page, along with a video and a lot of information and some illustrations that everybody could look at.
Nice. Now what's inside? What's going on in there?
In the book?
Yeah, no spoilers, though, but I mean, give us a few hints. How do we know the Earth is round? And when did they define that?
So Annabelle and Aiden. So every Annabelle and Aiden book really starts with Annabelle and Aiden looking at something in nature, and they ask a question. So in this case, Annabelle and Aiden watch a ship in the distance sail over the horizon and disappear from the bottom up. And they're kind of freaked out. Aiden asks, where did the boat go? Did it fall off the edge of the earth? How did it disappear from the bottom up? and the kids think about it, and then their friend Tardigrade Tom comes along and says, let me help you find the answers. Let's go back in time. Jump on my back. So they jump on his back, and he goes through a time portal, and they visit ancient civilizations to learn about what ancient civilizations believed about the shape of the earth. So they go through China and Greece and Egypt and many different civilizations until they get to a man named Eratosthenes, and they learned how he found the earth is round. And in short, they watch him set out. He was the head librarian of the Library of Alexandria. And in short, he sets out. He noticed that in a city near him, the name of the city is Syene. I think it's on the coast of Egypt. He learns that he sees a well, and he sees that at noon every day, the sun shines directly overhead the well, and there's no shadow. The sunlight reaches the water directly. And he wonders if that is the same thing that is happening in other places, like in Alexandria, at the same exact time of day. So he travels back to Alexandria, and the next day he waits until noon. He puts a stick in the ground, or he notices there's a pillar in front of him because he doesn't have a well, and he sees that there is a shadow. The sun is not directly overhead in Alexandria at noon like it is in Syene. And he measures the angle of the shadow is 7 degrees. So he figures the earth is not flat, because if it was, there would be no shadow essentially everywhere, or at least everywhere in that area, because the sun would be directly overhead. Yeah. The fact that there's a shadow in one place and not in the other shows the earth is curved. And he even goes on to deduce the size of the earth from the angle of the shadow in Alexandria. He sees it's 7 degrees, which is about a 50th of a circle. He hires someone to walk the distance from Alexandria to Syene and actually measure the distance. And they measure, it's about 800 kilometers.
Wow, that's a long walk.
Yeah, and that's a 50th of a circle. Well, 7-degree angle is a 50th of a circle. So he multiplies 800 kilometers by 50, and he actually gets, in ancient times, pretty much correct the size of our planet with nothing but a stick.
Nothing but a stick
and the shadow of the sun.
And paying someone to do the manual labor.
Yeah, basically. They were counting their steps, I think.
Wow. How many steps did you say? 8,000 miles?
They have it down as, I don't know how many steps, but they measured in something called stades. So they have it down as 5,000 stades, which is equal to about 500 kilometers.
500 kilometers. Oh, my God. That's well, I think that's 300 miles, right?
Yeah, because I'm a stupid American. I have no idea.
Well, I just know a 5K race is a 3-mile race.
Okay.
So I cheated a little bit.
Yeah, we'll have to Google that.
But yeah, that would take some time to walk 300 miles.
Yeah, I don't know how, I'm sure I don't know if they were backpacking or, no, I don't know how they did it. But they were professional, I actually looked into it. There were professional step counters or whatever they were called, distance counters.
I wonder if they did it on the back of a camel, because that would make a lot of sense and save a lot of time. And you could approximate, how many steps a camel takes.
It's fascinating. I don't know if they slept in different cabins on the way or different lodges, or I don't know how that would be a fascinating, maybe a topic for a book in itself. The secret life of step counters, the step counting industry in ancient Egypt.
Yeah. It doesn't pay a lot, but it covers the bills. It's nice, steady work. Good exercise.
Right. You don't need a gym membership, right?
Yeah, I told my wife years ago, I said, one of my ideas to lose weight, I said, I think I'm going to be a roofer. And she's like, what's a roofer? And I go, no, the guys that work on the roof. You never see fat guys on the roof. And she goes, that's because they fall through. I'm like, oh, my God. So, yeah, I probably would pass out on the first day and just fall off the roof. But and did any other cultures ever figure this out, or was he the only one?
So Eratosthenes is a Greek man, And then it does talk about there were other Greeks that figured it out around his time. Aristotle actually wrote about it in one of his texts, and Aristotle's reasons were different, and they were related to watching a ship disappear over the horizon from the bottom up. And he said if the Earth was flat, it wouldn't do that. It would just disappear completely, or it would just disappear. It would just get smaller and smaller and smaller until it wouldn't disappear from the bottom up.
Right.
Aristotle also looked at the stars, and he noticed that the stars looked different in one place, in one part of his country than in the other part, or wherever he was on Earth. If he went far enough, the stars looked different.
Right.
If the Earth was flat, they wouldn't look that different. You wouldn't be seeing different stars.
Now,
so Aristotle figured it out.
Nice.
There is some talk about Pythagoras and other people, but Eratosthenes is the main one, and I think he was the first one.
Now, of course, some people could come up with some interesting, creative, and wackadoodle counter-arguments that can solve all of this if the Earth is still flat. Have you talked to any of those people? Have you heard from them? Are you worried you're going to hear from them?
Partly worried and partly looking forward to it. But yeah, it's about half and half. But I actually, about a week ago from the date of this recording, I posted about my Kickstarter book, and someone commented, sure enough, he wrote these words. He wrote, "The Earth is not a sphere. Stop indoctrinating children." And I thought, okay, maybe he's kidding. He's making fun of flat earthers. And I went to his profile, and no, he's completely serious and very much invested in there being a flat earth. So I am expecting some pushback, but I think that only goes to show the importance of this book. And it also talks about, the book also teaches critical thinking, and I think that's so important, just how to consume information and how to weed out the false information from truth and what is evidence and all of that. So I think this just goes to show the importance of the book, and any pushback I get, I plan on highlighting as more of a reason to get the book. I think it's important, and that's what my book series is about. A lot of it, as you know, is about mythology and just how to filter information. So I think I might get some more pushback. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. And I don't know if you knew, but since the last time we talked, I moved to Florida.
Okay.
And Florida is now the grand champion of book banning and lesson banning.
Wow.
There was a program on Black history that was being tested out in schools all around the country, and the governor here made it illegal, banned it. I don't know what he did exactly, but it's no longer taught in Florida because we don't want anyone to know how hard it might have been for African Americans to struggle in the United States. Whoops, everyone, we got disconnected, and as JR had suggested, because I don't want to steal his idea that maybe the state of Florida found out we had said some things that aren't allowed in the state and cut us off. But I hope that's a joke. I mean, I hope that's not real. But we were talking about the weirdness in Florida. But let's not get too distracted by that. Tell me about where people can go again to make a contribution to get in this book, and tell me about some of the perks that they can get.
Awesome. So the website domain name is actually the title of the book. So howwefoundtheearthisround.com, which I thought had a nice rhyme to it. So if people go to howwefoundtheearthisround.com, they could pre-order the book. All the books come signed by the author, myself, and with stickers, and there's backpacks, there's tardigrade plushies. You could bring me in for a school visit. I think the most popular and unique reward that always goes fast is that people could purchase that their children's faces will be inside of the book. So they could email me pictures of their children's face or their own face or their family, and they'll be inside the book as a part of it forever. And that goes in every single copy of the book forever that's ever printed. So there's about 50 spots or so. So that's something that people want to grab quickly. But yeah, those are all the perks. It's a lot of fun, and you get to be part of the book forever. You get to say you helped make it happen, and you get signed copies of the book yourself, and they're discounted. So how we found the earth is round.com.
Excellent. I know that people will go sign up because you've done this before. So don't wait, everybody. If you're hearing this and it's pretty close to that time in March of 23, go sign up. And I'm just going to wrap us up because of our connection issues. And I know that you are recovering from a cold, so thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure we get to?
That's really it. The series is about science and critical thinking, and this is just another book that teaches that. It's needed in the world today, so I appreciate everyone helping to support science education for the next generation. There's footnotes in the books for adults as well that are scientific and historic little tidbits of information. I'm just so grateful to you, Phil, and for the ability to be on the show. And I want to thank everybody for listening.
Well, I appreciate it. Of course, everybody, if you want to look, any bookstore, the series that's already out is Annabelle and Aiden. The author is J.R. Becker, and you can go find those. J.R., thank you so much for coming and visiting the Phil Ferguson Show. I appreciate it.
As always, I'm grateful. Thank you.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
What did this person who made this world intend it for? And this is the point where you think, well, it fits me very well. You know, the caves and the forests and the stream and the mammoths. He must have made it for me. I mean, there's no other conclusion you can come to. And it's rather like a puddle waking up one morning. I know they don't normally do this, but allow me, I'm a science fiction writer. A puddle wakes up one morning and thinks, this is a very interesting world I find myself in. It fits me very neatly. In fact, it fits me so neatly, I mean, really precise, isn't it? It must have been made to have me in it. And the sun rises, and he's continuing to narrate the story about this hole being made to have him in it. And the sun rises, and gradually the puddle is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And by the time the puddle ceases to exist, it's still thinking, it's still trapped in this idea that the hole was there for it. And if we think the world is here for us, we will continue to destroy it in the way that we've been destroying it.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. I had a little fun event happen, and I wanted to share it with you. You may not know this, but in my house in the Orlando area, my office is right up front, which I love. Plus, it's north, so I don't get any direct sunlight. I get plenty of light, but not direct sunlight hitting out the office. But I look north out of my house towards the street. So when any deliveries come or anyone shows up at the house and they walk up to the door to knock on the door, I see them coming, which is kind of fun. So I see this guy coming, and he's a young gentleman, and I'm thinking to myself, the most likely thing, no, not religious people, solar panel salespeople. They can't help themselves. And it will often start off with something like, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm not going to give the name because I got a story. I'm so-and-so, and I work with so-and-so solar company, and we're in the neighborhood installing some solar panels for one of your neighbors, and I see you don't have any solar panels yet, so I wanted to see if I could give you a quote, because I think we can beat the price of anybody else, kind of thing. So they come door to door. First of all, I generally don't like that, but on this day, I happen to be in a peculiar mood. I see this young gentleman walking up to the house, and I hop up, and I get to my front door before he does. And as he's getting ready to ring the bell or knock on the door, I whip open the door and I say hello. And in this case, I just started talking to them in Italian. He actually had a few Italian words to respond with, which was pretty cool. It was only a couple of words, but I was impressed. Clearly an intelligent person. But I ask him what I can do for him, and he does the whole spiel. Hi, I'm so-and-so with so-and-so solar company, and you know so-and-so down at the end of the street. Well, yeah. Well, he said that you were looking for solar. All of that was true. So it's a very strong start, right, for a normal person. And he mentions about the company, and I just let him talk a little bit. And then for some reason, I don't know why this came out, he happens to mention that he's Mormon. And I was like, what? And I said, you probably don't want to throw that out at the very beginning of the conversation, because to be honest with you, when I hear that you're Mormon and knowing that that is so trivially, easily falsifiable, it makes me almost want to bust out with laughter. And he says, excuse me, he's confused. He can't believe what he heard. So he says something like, can you say that again? Like he couldn't process it. So I said it all again. And he says, I think that's kind of rude. And I said, well, I could see how it would be interpreted that way. And I said, and I respect you, and I respect all people, but I don't respect bad ideas or bad beliefs that could harm somebody or harm others. As an example, and he wants to talk, but I keep talking. I said, as an example, if you and I are on the roof of a 10-story building and you walk over to the edge and you believe with all your heart that you can walk off that 10-story building and not be harmed, I have an ethical, moral, which one's better, ethical or moral? I have an ethical responsibility to prevent you, to block you, to stop you, to tackle you. Not because I don't respect you. It's because I do value you, but I don't respect your mistaken, ridiculously, potentially deadly belief that you can walk off the roof of this building and not be harmed. I would not be able to live with myself if I didn't make the effort to stop you from harming yourself. And I see religion that way. And so when you tell me that you're Mormon, and what I know of Mormonism and how comically easily falsifiable it is, I have to wonder how it's possible in this modern age that anyone could claim to hold to that religion. And of course, he's kind of like dumbfounded. He then informs me, very common response from a religious person, that he used to be an atheist. He grew up Mormon. He used to be an atheist, became an atheist, but then got reconvinced that Mormonism is correct. And I said, wow, I'm fascinated. What could possibly convince a clear-headed atheistic freethinker that Mormonism is true? Because I'd love to hear it. And he says something like, well, I had a spiritual experience. And I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know what the fuck that means. I honestly don't. Before you go into the details of what that experience is, and I am not doubting at all that you had an experience. When someone tells me they had an experience, I believe them. Testify. It's your story. Whatever you experienced, you experienced. I don't doubt you at all. What I'm confused by is, what do you mean by a spiritual experience? So before you tell me the experience, please define for me what spiritual is. And it quickly went off the rails. He tried for 15 minutes and he was doing a lot of, and I thought, I was very impressed because he'd be like, That's a really good question. I think spiritual, no. Spiritual is this. I go, well, that's not how other people define spiritual. Is that what you want to go with? No, that's not right. It's something that maybe makes you feel good. And I said, so if I'm drunk and I'm really happy, is that a spiritual? No, that's not it. And he came up with other examples and ideas, and then very, very nice gentleman would realize when I would point out problems with his definition that that's probably not what he means by spiritual. He tried this for 15 minutes. He never succeeded. He ended up shifting to other arguments or other topics, realizing he was getting nowhere with spiritual. And we spent another good 10 minutes with, I don't know, general tropes about religion and the Bible. And we talked about Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. Lot came up. And, we also talked about Mormonism in specific. One thing that I said that I was wrong, and he corrected me, and I thanked him for correcting me, that prior to 1974, I think is what I said, black people weren't allowed to be in the church. And he says, oh, you're talking about the change in 1978, which I'll have to recheck. The point is not that important, I don't think, but I should have it correctly. He says they weren't allowed to be members of the clergy, but they could join the organization. And I said, okay, fair enough. I had a mistake. Thank you for giving me that additional information. I will correct that going forward. But it's also clear that you knew this information. It was not new from me telling you. And you're still okay being a member of an organization that specifically restricted people by race up until the modern era only a couple of decades ago. Doesn't that bother you? He's like, well, yeah, maybe, but they fixed it. Like, oh, okay. So we talked for a few more minutes about religion, and he was getting tired of it, so that's cool. Then he went back to solar panels. And I said, oh, well, I should have mentioned at the very beginning, I've already signed a contract and paid a deposit. I've already made my decision. So you coming here, the point is moot. I'm not buying panels from you. And he says, well, you know what they say, unless there's something installed, you could always get out of the contract. And I said, wow, for me to do that, for me to sign a contract and then for no good reason, even if his price was a few bucks lower, for me to sign a contract and then renege on the contract. And I mean, if the other party's done something wrong, that's one thing. But for me to just go, I changed my mind, particularly if I changed my mind because this young guy came to my door, I said, I consider that to be unethical. And the very fact that you are suggesting that I should behave in a way that's unethical would now prohibit me, even if it was an option, which it's not, would prohibit me from doing business with you and or the company that you work for. And he just stood there and didn't know what to say. And then I finished up with something like, I kind of thought that religion was supposed to make someone more ethical. And he didn't know what to say. So I thanked him for his time and he shook my hand and he left. So I don't know. Did anything good come from this? I don't know. Maybe in 5 years, he'll come and find me and say, hey, you sent me down a path and I realized that religion is bullshit. Maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe he goes and talks to somebody and they reconvince him and he's even more devout than ever. But fun story. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any questions and we'll take a break and go off with something else.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
I've always been an atheist. I simply, as time went on, I became more interested in American intellectual history, and I felt that the secular side of our history was very much underrepresented in readable, popular history books. So that's how I got into it. I am not an atheist propagandist in that I'm not interested in converting people to atheism. What I'm interested in is talking about what the secular side of our history has meant to the development of the United States.
And what has the secular side of the development of our history meant for the development of the United States?
Well, it's something that's not talked about much because we've got all these people going blah, blah, blah about how this was founded as a Christian nation. But it wasn't founded as a Christian nation, although we were overwhelmingly a majority Christian people at the time the Constitution was written. But what did the founders do in the Constitution? They made a break with all previous documents, including the state constitutions at the time after the Revolution, and they didn't mention God. They didn't say that governmental power flows from God. They said, we the people. The word God does not appear in the Constitution at all, which always astonishes my college audiences when I tell them that, which tells you how badly American history is taught. In fact, what's generally taught about the origins of the United States is everybody who came here for religious liberty, which is true. But initially, before we became the United States and were colonial America, the people who came here for religious liberty came here for religious liberty for themselves, not for anybody else. So the first thing the Puritans did in Massachusetts was try to get rid of everybody who didn't agree with them. However, the founders had a very different view, which is because there were already people of so many different faiths here, we needed to have no state faith. So they just left it out altogether of the Constitution. The First Amendment was made specifically to protect religion from government. The Constitution itself, which leaves God out, was meant to protect government from religion. The two go together.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. Recently, I attended a webinar. A lot of companies do webinars for investment advisors to tell you about all the cool things that they do. And it's funny because there's this thing, if you're registered in certain different ways for like a certified financial planner or something like that, you get continuing education or CE credits for keeping up on things, I guess. And I think the intention is continuing education is that you're learning something, but most of these things are kind of sales pitch stuff. This one wasn't real sales pitch. It was put on by Schwab, because I get a lot of stuff from them because they bought TD Ameritrade and all of my clients' accounts, and many of my accounts will be Schwab pretty soon. Anywho, this was about how much you can withdraw per year in retirement. And they created some models and ran some scenarios, and depending on all of the assumptions and depending on market volatility and different types of investment categories, they mostly did stocks versus bonds, which is kind of thankfully cool, what I do. And, you know, they would say, what if it's half stocks and half bonds? What if it's 80% stocks and 20% bonds? So they did that. And, you know, there's always, any model has assumptions, and they made several assumptions, some explicit, some implicit. And I watched an hour-long, very vigorous, very nuanced and informative conversation about it, where they had someone else from Schwab asking them really good questions. And of course, they had some listener questions for the last 15 minutes of the hour-long presentation. So well worth my time, and that's rare to go to a webinar of any kind and think that it's useful. So first of all, I guess I should have put this even earlier, I have not changed how I recommend withdrawals. If anything, I feel really good about it. But just to summarize, before I start talking about what Schwab was talking about, the Polaris plan, Phil's recommendation, is that if you are going to retire and you have a portfolio and you're going to start taking money out, before the age of 62, you should limit yourself to 4% of the portfolio at maximum. If you can take out less, very freaking cool. but 4% is the maximum. From 62 to 67, 5% is my recommendation. Again, if you can take out less, that might be a little bit better for you. Over 67, and this is quite controversial in the industry. I don't know, controversial. Nobody fucking knows who I am. Outside of the wonderful listeners to this show, I say 6% and maybe even higher as you get older. The reason that that's controversial is because they want to know for sure, absolutely 100% of the time, you're always going to have more money, which is kind of interesting because the Schwab analysis, they wanted to have a 90% probability that you would still have money remaining after 30 years of withdrawals. So those are pretty reasonable expectations. Of course, if you're retiring at the age of 70, the probability that you're going to live to 100 is, unfortunately, for all of us, less than 1%. So there's a 90% chance that your money would live or would survive for the next 30 years under these Schwab ideas. So that's 90%, but only 1% of listeners, 1% of retirees are going to make it to 100 if you start retiring at 70. So kind of a moot thing whether you have money left or not. In my head, maybe I'm wrong. Odds are I'm not going to make, well, first of all, I'm not going to make it to 100. I don't think I'm going to make it to 90. And if I do, I'm probably not going to really know or care, or probably not going to be able to travel much. I know there's always exceptions and some people can, and yay for them. And it'd still be nice to have money left then too. I'm not trying to have anyone go broke at 90 just because you won't be around, but we need some balance. One thing that I'll look at as an example, if you take 5% out of your portfolio per year and your portfolio makes nothing, returns nothing, loses nothing, you can do that for 20 years. So taking 5% out and making nothing, you can do that for 20 years. So getting to 30 years is a little harder, but what causes the really big problem with most of these ideas and most of these plans is that if you are partially, mostly, 50-50, 90% in stock, and you have a year, maybe like 2022, but more important, like 2008, where the market went down 37%, if you still take out the same percentage from your portfolio, it can have a really painful hit. And so that's what causes the conservative nature, the possibility that there's 1 year that's really negative. So let me talk about what Schwab presented a little bit. Their default number, which was going to work all the time, give or take, is about 3.3%. I think that's wildly too conservative, but you know what? That's what they had. Now, they started to make some caveats and explanations. One of the things that they assumed is a little bit higher inflation than what is historically normal for the United States, at least for the last 30 or 40, 50, 60 years. And maybe that makes their calculations more conservative, but I think they overdid it a little bit. Another thing that they assumed is that as that inflation goes up, every year you will spend more money. Pretty reasonable assumption. But I know from most historical data, from most people, that once they hit retirement, let's say your budget is 50 grand a year in retirement, pretty much you're going to take out 50 grand per year. You're going to spend 50 grand per year going forward. There is some small effect for inflation that might encourage you to spend more, might require you to spend more. But some people, most people, as they get older, they don't have to take care of kids. They might downsize their house. They might have fewer cars, or the cars are paid off. They might take fewer vacations. They may not go as far. So there's ways to work around. So anyway, but then they did some things where they put in, they ran a scenario where you don't adjust fully for inflation, which I thought was more reasonable. And then you start to get rates where you could take out 4 to 4.5% per year. And I think all of their numbers weren't based on your age, just how if you can you do it for 30 years and be successful and still have money left over. And in some cases, having ginormous portfolios, and the single biggest driver And a lot of this is what happens in the first or second year of retirement, or in all practicality, what happens the year or two before or after you start retirement. Very, very important, because if you hit retirement with $2 million, or if the market goes down 40%, like it did in '08, and you hit retirement at 1.2 million, very different numbers to start from. So that's something you have to be aware of. But it was a really nice presentation if you assume that you have some flexibility with the amount of money that you can take out. If you assume, as one of their scenarios, that you don't fully adjust for inflation, now you start to get numbers where you could take out 5 or 6%, which, is kind of getting into the ballpark where I start making some suggestions. And mine are age dependent, because the probability of you living 30 years or longer becomes lower and lower as you age. A couple of things that they did that are very important in their assumptions, and I have not heard anyone do it any other way. The first one is that they assume that you had no cash on hand. I did not like that assumption. I'll tell you why in a minute, because it goes with the second thing. They assume that all dividends were automatically reinvested. Let's see, what else did they assume? That when you're taking withdrawals, you're taking equal withdrawals from everything that you own. And I think these assumptions are either convenient, lazy, or downright fucking sloppy. Honestly, I kind of expected more. So let me talk about the assumption of $0 cash on hand. One of the things that I do for clients close to or in retirement is I recommend, first of all, you should have several months of cash in your bank. Because what I don't want to have happen, and I've had this happen with actual paying clients in the past, and they know who they are, and we've had wonderful conversations about it, and we fixed the problem. But I don't want you calling me on Monday saying, hey, Phil, the money that was normally supposed to go from TD Ameritrade or Schwab to my bank didn't move over. Well, it's because it was scheduled to go on Saturday, and that's not a normal bank day, and neither is Sunday. And oh, by the way, you're calling me on Monday, which is a holiday, and it might not even happen Tuesday, because these kinds of transfers usually happen overnight. And so it'll happen Tuesday night, it'll show up Wednesday, which is why I normally tell people, expect it to take 2 weeks for you to get money out of one of these retirement accounts or a taxable account, even if you don't have anything to sell. It's not meant to be a replacement for a savings account or a checkbook. So on hand, locally, you should have 3 or more months of cash on hand. You can use that, particularly if the market goes down dramatically, or if you have a year like 22 where bonds and stocks, pretty much all of them went down, some more than others, and we'll get to that too. But, the market went down. If you can pause for a few months taking money out, that might be nice to do. So that's kind of cool reason to have some cash on hand. But like I said, for me, it's primarily that if you can't reach me for a few days, or I happen to go to Italy, or you don't remember to do something for a couple of days, I don't want you writing checks or paying bills that are going to bounce because you had 5 days left of cash on hand and you miscalculated. Particularly if you have a large portfolio. If you have a whole bunch of money, you should be able to eliminate that stress in your life. That is the purpose of the money. The purpose of the money is not to make more money. Often we talk about making more money because the bigger purpose is to make your life easier and better and more comfortable. So don't create a lot of stress for yourself just to try to eke out a teeny bit more performance. Make sure you have cash on hand locally that you can drive to and pull out a few hundred or even a few $1,000s if you need it. If you find that you're spontaneously needing $40,000 tomorrow for something, we probably need to have a discussion about some of your life choices. Because what are you doing that you spontaneously need $40,000 tomorrow? Again, anyway, then in your accounts, in your brokerage accounts, in your Roths, in your IRAs, your 401ks, maybe not so much 401ks, but accounts that I might manage, and you're taking money out or you're about to start taking money out, I usually recommend 6, maybe all the way up to 12 months of cash on hand. So you can interpret that. Let's say it's 6 months of cash on hand. If you're taking 4% out, say you're under 62, that means roughly 2% of your total portfolio is cash on hand. Now, of course, you can think correctly that, Phil, if there's 2% sitting in there making nothing, or, a couple of percent, you're missing out on the upside opportunity when the market goes up. Yeah, you are. Absolutely. If the market were to return, let's say everything else, 98% was in stock, which it's not going to be, but let's say 98% was in stock. If the market goes up 10, you would make something like 9.8 instead of 10. Who the fuck cares, right? You should be ready for retirement and have a proper portfolio that now at retirement, you're not going to notice the difference between 9.8 and 10% return for that one calendar year. But again, this is to protect for sudden changes, a big shock to the portfolio, a big drop in the economy or the markets. So if you have 6 months or 12 months of cash on hand in your portfolio and the market drops 20, 30, 40%, that gives you a little bit more buffer to allow you some time to contemplate your options. None of that is in their study. The other thing that's critically important for me is that you have that, what do we call it? The granularity and the clarity that goes along with it, that you have different investments and you can see what they've done. So the first thing to think about, last year might have been a little tough. This year it's easy because interest rates have gone up so much. I'm going to make it overly simple just for the purposes of this conversation. If you have half of your money in stocks making 2% dividends and half of your money in bonds making 3% dividends, actually, now it's going to be 4%. Let's call it 4%. Some of the short-term bonds are now paying close to 5%, but let's conservative 4%. Half your money is making 4%, half your money is making 2%. On average, that's 3%. If you're pulling 4% out per year, during the calendar year, your portfolio is spinning out a total of 3% that is created as cash on hand. This is one of the reasons why I like to have all dividends go to cash. Another thing is that if you're growing your portfolio and or need to rebalance, you can use that cash and you don't have to sell something, and you get to avoid a possible transaction fee to sell something, and you avoid possible tax consequences for selling something that had a gain, because you can use the cash on hand and or new contributions if you're increasing the size of your portfolio, where you can avoid some taxes and some trading costs by just investing either the cash on hand or the new cash that you added. Anyway, not the purpose of this segment. So if your portfolio spins off 3%, let's say you have $1 million portfolio, it spins off 3%, that's $30,000. And you need $10,000 more to get to a total of 40. Well, if you already had $20,000 of cash on hand, 2%, to cover 6 months of the 40 grand that you need for the year, and your portfolio creates 30, you could live off the dividends, 30,000, and half of the cash that was on hand, 10,000, to get to the 40,000. And in a year where the market does horrible things, you don't have to sell anything. You don't have to sell anything at all. So you are losing a teeny little bit of the upside potential to cover your ass when the market falls 40%. I think that's pretty fucking cool. Now, in that scenario, if dividends are that high, which they are today, they weren't a year and a half ago, but they are today, you go into a second year, the portfolio still might spin off 30,000, maybe a little less. Maybe some stocks start to reduce their dividends. It's a slow process and it's not a dramatic process, and the dividends don't fall very fast. They don't fall a lot on a summary level. Again, I've done segments on that. So the second year, if you're taking out 4% and the portfolio has dividends of 3%, you need another 10,000, which you had already. You now have a second full calendar year where you didn't have to sell anything that was down. I think that's pretty fucking cool. We're not even talking about touching what's in your local bank, but you have a year or two because of a little bit of cash on hand and because of dividends that are going automatically to cash, where you can keep taking out, in this theoretical scenario, 40 grand a year, 4% of your portfolio. That would be, what is it, 3,000, 3,400, something like that, 3,500. 3,500, that'd be 42. So it's a little bit below that, but you could keep doing what you're doing. Also, if in retirement you're getting a pension that might be a fixed or inflation adjusted, how cool is that? Also, if you are getting Social Security for one or two people, that's pretty cool. That's not going to go down when the market goes down. Matter of fact, in this last year, it probably went up quite a bit because it's adjusted for inflation. So if your spending doesn't increase as much as inflation, but your Social Security or pension does increase, particularly if it increases to match inflation, you could have more money. If bond dividends go up, you could have more cash flow than what you needed, even though bonds and stocks went down. Now, if you don't have enough cash on hand, if your dividends aren't high enough, well, now you may be in a position where you need to sell something. That is the beauty, I think, the way I do it. And maybe I got it all fucked up, but I think it sounds pretty cool. Last year, 2022, the Vanguard Large Cap Value Index Fund lost about 2%. So you didn't have a ton of money in that one specific, well, actually, it's a pretty big part of your overall portfolio, but it's a small percentage. But if you were still short 10 grand, you could go in there with your little scalpel, mathematical investing scalpel, and take 10 grand out of that fund and think to yourself, well, later I'll adjust that if I have to. But that part of your portfolio is down 2%. So you're not selling from the market down 19 or 20%. And that's one of the things with these plans, to make them simple. They say, well, if half your money is in stocks, it's down 19%, and half your money is in bonds, it's down 13%. Because they use the total bond and the total stock market, because they want to keep it relatively simple to kind of give you generalities. But if you have multiple U.S. index funds, and you have multiple international index funds, and you have multiple bond funds, you can see exactly what you own. You can see the exact amounts that you own, and you can sell only from the teeny little piece that you want to sell from. And this is one of the reasons why I will often say uncomplimentary things about target date funds, particularly close to or in retirement. If you have a target date fund that's half bonds, and let's say total bonds is down 13, like it was in 22, and total stock is down 19, like it was in 22, your portfolio is half minus 19 and half minus 13. So we're going to average out into the middle. What is that? Minus 16? So your portfolio is down 16. If you need money out of there, you have to pull money out, and they'll sell from everything that you own, and you're selling stuff that's down 16%. Whereas if you own the individual components, you may have the exact same mix of investments. But because you can see the different funds, because you own the different funds, you could sell from the Vanguard Large Cap Value Fund at -2. You can also have the dividends because you didn't have them automatically reinvested, which is the norm recommendation advice. In retirement, I don't think that's a good idea for most people. There's always exceptions. And if you don't want to take too much out of that, you can look at some of the short-term bond funds that did lose considerable amounts of money, 3, 4, 5%. And we also got lucky. Lucky, planned, whatever. We had more money in value than growth. That's now changed if you're paying attention to the recent shows. And the bond portfolios I was using were almost painfully conservative, which worked out way cool. Again, the total bond market index is down 13, but bond portfolios for many of my clients were down 7 or 8%. But part of that bond portfolio was the short-term, very conservative bonds, which might have been down 4 or 5%, and they've actually come back some because the yields are now 4, 4.5, or even 5%. And so that starts to build back the losses that you had. So anyway, so you may not need to sell something because of the dividends going up. But if you do need to sell something, you can look at all the investments you have. You can take money out of the Vanguard Large Cap Value Fund down 2%. And you can take money out of the bonds that might be down 3 or 4 or 5%. You're not taking money out at minus 16%. And the models assume that you're taking an equal portion out of the bonds and the stocks based on the percentages that you own. You don't have to do that in reality if you own all of the index funds. So you have this ability to pick and choose, which gives you a huge advantage, secondo me, according to me, in my opinion, that these plans and these models don't account for. There are different years where domestic stocks are down, but international are up. Well, if you need more money, guess what? You sell from international. If all the international funds are down 30%, but the domestic funds are down 5%, maybe you sell from domestic, or maybe that your bonds are up and you can sell from there. So you have a lot of flexibility. But of course, to do any of that, you have to have the granularity and the clarity that comes out as a benefit of something like the Polaris plan. If you just have a regular old advisor and they buy you 5 or 6 different mutual funds that have all different names, which is just a marketing gimmick, and one says growth and dividend, one says conservative fund, one's an aggressive, super aggressive, mega aggressive, blended aggressive, conservative and income, growth and income, dividend and income. What's funny is often if you take a look at these funds, you go to Morningstar.com and you look at the stocks that they all own a lot of the same shit. Now, in smaller percentages, there's different stocks, but they own the same stuff. One of the nice things about index funds is they invest in either the total market or a subsection of the market, particularly the Vanguard ones. There is some overlap from fund to fund that is really hard to avoid, and maybe you don't even want them to avoid it. Again, a whole nother segment for that. But because of that, you can go and pick and choose what you want to sell from. If you have 6 different managed mutual funds, which are probably dramatically underperforming the indexes anyway, and they all own Tesla, and they all own Microsoft, and they all own Facebook in very large amounts, if that part of the market is down, even though you do have value stocks in your portfolio, you can't sell them specifically because they're part of those funds. So anyway, I'm repeating myself. I know I am, but it's so important that you have the ability to see what you own, to control the ratios and the percentages and different things. You want to make sure you have cash on hand locally for a multitude of reasons. If you're in retirement or close to retirement, you do really want to have cash on hand, even in your investment accounts. You are reducing the long-term gains by a small amount, but you're providing a lot of protection for yourself if things go south. And that protection can cover you for a good part of a year, maybe 2, depending on how much cash you have. Of course, you could make it even bigger, but then you really start to put a dent in returns. And then with the granularity and the clarity, you can go in with our investing scalpel and sell the things that you want. That is why I think one can be allowed to take out 5% or 6% if you're over the age of 67, or even higher percentages if you're older. You have the ability to use more of your money. If you are in the position where you could say one year, hey, I don't need to take out any money this year at all because all of my fixed costs are covered by a pension or Social Security or real estate or rental properties or whatever else it is that you've done. If you have that kind of flexibility, you could And of course, that would be very specific and independent to your situation. And none of this, of course, is personalized investment advice. These are just ideas for the general. But depending on your situation, you might be able to take out a higher amount if you could spontaneously switch to zero. So if you wanted to start retirement at 55 and you want to take out 5% or 6% or 7%, you might be able to do that if you are able to go to 0% if things don't go your way, if you're able to go back to work and make some more money if you have to. That could provide flexibility for taking out a higher amount in the portfolio, but be very careful. Anyway, some thoughts on how much you can take out of your portfolio per year. I hope that was helpful. If you have questions and you want follow up, of course, email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. If this sounds like something you don't want to fuck around with and you want to hire somebody and your portfolio is $2 million or larger, and when I say $2 million, that's the manageable assets. So if you own some land or property or a house or $1 million cars, they don't count. I'm talking about $2 million that I can help you with, and I can put in something like this. We may not be able to get there the first year because everything's complicated, but we can build a portfolio that makes more sense for you, that's more balanced for you, more productive for you, better visibility and granularity, where you can have better control in retirement and an increased sense of safety and security that you can look inside and see what you own and where it is. Of course, if you have 2 million or more and you want to talk to me about that, that's cool. All of that, of course, is phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Please note during your first email to me, do not include your social security number. Do not send a statement. Do not send me account numbers. We'll talk first. Please do include your telephone number. I'll call you. We can have a brief chat. And if that's all you needed, you just had a couple of questions, cool, no problem. You don't owe me anything. I like doing this. If you find that you think it would be beneficial to continue to talk more and to potentially eventually hire me, that's cool too. That's how I make my living. So it's nice every once in a while when someone wants to do that. Anyway, all of this longer than I expected. I'm just going to stop and go on with the rest of the show. I want to take a moment and thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, if you like the show, leave a 5-star review or share with a friend or two so they can listen to the show. Just one quick roundup thing. Over the weekend that just passed, I was at the Free Flow Conference in Orlando, Florida. They do it every other year. So you're going to have to wait 2 more years if you miss this one. I think it was over 300 people. So that's really cool for, I don't know, a regional conference. But the quality of speakers that they had, this should have had maybe 1,000 people. Absolutely fantastic. We had great speakers. We had great comedy. We had a drag show. We had a dance party. I just showed up and donated some money to help make sure it happens, but absolutely fantastic. So keep your ears open for the next Free Flow in 2025. And of course, if you're looking for something to do around this time of year, next year in 2024, there is going to be a Free Flow cruise. That's right, a cruise ship where you can get tickets on a cruise ship and go hang out with a bunch of like-minded people. But keeping it short again, just like I did in the beginning, because we have so much stuff in the show. Thank you to everyone that did all the work for the Free Flow Conference, because I did almost nothing. I had a table there. I just hung out, met really cool people, and had a great time. So put that on your list of things to do in 2 years or in 1 year, the cruise, because you're going to like it. Thank you for listening. And soon, in a couple of weeks, I will be at the American Atheists Conference in Phoenix. It's Easter weekend. If you're going there, please feel free to come up to me and say hello. Until then, ciao.